Hi, everybody. My name is Dr. William Clark. I want to welcome you to the Dr. William Clark podcast. And this is the podcast where we talk about nonprofit strategy, fundraising, and leadership. Today, we are engaged in the middle of our podcast interview series where we're talking with a number of funders who have influence in our communities and who really can offer, I think, a wonderful perspective to help nonprofit organizations strengthen their fundraising efforts. Today, our guest is Jackie Downey from the Community Foundation of Greater New Haven. Hey, Jackie, how are you?
Good. How are you this morning?
I'm good. I appreciate you making time for us. For everybody that's listening today, we're going to be talking about how to effectively fundraise and how to do this while building what we believe are healthy relationships with funders. To that end, this interview series is connected to the release of our latest webinar, Bottleneck Breakers: How to Break Past Fundraising Barriers. And I got to tell you, if you have not registered for that particular webinar, it is the webinar to attend, where we're going to walk through the details of how to navigate through fundraising difficulties, but also identify what we believe are the critical 8 stages of effective fundraising. So to register for that particular webinar, simply go to elipatrick.com/ bottleneck breakers. Again, that's elipatrick.com/ bottleneck breakers. Now, before we get started, I want to read this bio of Jackie just so you all know who she is and where she comes from and her background. So, Jackie, bear with me. This is probably too long for you, but I think for the folks that need to hear this, I think it's super helpful. So, Jackie Downey brings over 3 decades of dedicated service in the nonprofit sector. She embodies a commitment to community development, grant making, and organizational effectiveness. Currently, Jackie serves as the Senior Director of Grant Making and Nonprofit Support at the Community Foundation for Greater New Haven. She has been instrumental in shaping the philanthropic landscape of the region for the past 13 years. In her role, Jackie oversees strategic grant making initiatives aimed at fostering the growth and sustainability of nonprofit organizations, leveraging her extensive experience in program management, development, and administration. Prior to her current position, she served as the Director of Grant Making and Nonprofit Effectiveness, demonstrating her unwavering dedication to maximizing the impact of philanthropic investments. Jackie's journey in the nonprofit sector began at the Greater New Haven Community Loan Fund, where she served as the Director of Development and Administration, contributing to the economic empowerment of underserved communities through innovative financial solutions. Her tenure as Deputy Chief Administrative Officer at the town of Hamden further solidified her reputation as a dynamic leader, adept at navigating complex organizational challenges with strategic foresight. Throughout her career, Jackie has championed various causes, including youth development and arts advocacy. As a program and development director at Dixwell Community Q House, she spearheaded comprehensive youth programs, providing invaluable support to at-risk youth and families. Additionally, her role as a director of development at Sacred Heart Academy and assistant manager at the New Haven Symphony Orchestra underscore her multifaceted expertise in fundraising, public relations, and organizational management. Jackie holds a Bachelor's of Arts in Journalism degree from Southern Connecticut State University, and this, I believe, has connected to who she is today, and it, I think, feeds into the woman that we're getting ready to interview today. Everyone, welcome Jackie Downey. Jackie, glad to have you on the podcast.
Thank you. So happy to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. So I want to kick off this interview, Jackie, and I just want to give you the floor to share. We got a couple of questions to kind of run through, but I am going to ask you to put on your funder hat so that all of us who are learning from you today can kind of dive into this content that you're getting ready to share and apply it to where we are, regardless of the state, town, city that we represent, an organization that we represent. So to kick us off, to talk about this idea of effective fundraising. Start to talk to us about the importance of identifying the right funder when we as nonprofit leaders are looking to secure funding. And as you answer this question, Jackie, feel free to talk to us from the perspective of new organizations who are entering into the marketplace, as well as mature organizations who are looking to expand their portfolio of funders.
Okay, thank you. It's a great question and so often overlooked by organizations. They just, see an opportunity and jump at it, and that's not the right thing to do. So first, in the terms of the emerging and established organizations, um, really have to understand where you are in the scheme of things. Remember, any donor, whether it's an individual, a corporation, or a foundation, is probably not going to give you the biggest gift or ever going to give you in your first application. The first application is the foot in the door. The funder gets to know who you are, they get to know what you do, they get to know a little bit more about you and how you operate and how you respond to reporting requirements, how you report on your outcomes and what you're doing. So you're probably not going to go to a funder for the first time and ask for that big nut unless you have a relationship with them and unless you see that that's what their giving history is. And that's key. Every funder, very transparent. We all tell you on our websites exactly what we do in the world and what we want to accomplish. So if your mission matches, aligns very clearly with what this funder is doing, then that's the right place to pursue. If it doesn't, don't start turning yourself into a pretzel in order to fit into that application. Because it comes out in the application. This is not really their mission. They're just going after the money. And a funder doesn't want to waste their time with an organization like that. They want someone where the mission is true to their mission. You can also find what a funder is doing in their annual report. And almost everybody puts their annual report up online. And what that will tell you is how much their grants are. So you may see that you can apply for up to 25,000 or 50,000. But if you take a look in their annual report of the award amounts, you'll see what's more realistic. Maybe that top number only goes to a handful of organizations and their norm is more like 5 or 10. So with your foot in the door, you might want to come in the first time for that 5 or 10 to be more realistic. That helps you understand what the potential is within the organization and helps you craft the right kind of proposal to get to them that is realistic. That's what funders are looking for. They're looking for realistic proposals for the right amount of money, providing the right amount of outcomes, the right impact on the community based on the amount of money that's going out.
I want to tug on couple of strings that you shared so far with this first question. And you talked about particularly, and I think this statement you made applies to new and mature organizations, that the first application to what would be a new funder to you, if you're the nonprofit, might not yield the greatest result, right? You might not get all that you asked for unless there's a relationship involved. What are some effective strategies that you've seen over the years that can help nonprofit leaders and fundraising professionals do to build healthy, productive, and really lucrative relationships with funders?
Well, you can certainly put them on your mailing list so that they get newsletters, they get things that are going on. You can also, most funders do some kind of events in the community, particularly I'll speak for community foundations. Community foundations are of the community for the community. We do a lot of community events. We're out there and we're present. Show up, be there, make sure your board members are there. If it's just the professional leadership, sometimes we wonder if there's a good, solid, strong board of directors. So make sure your board members are out there and doing what they need to be doing and visiting and getting to know the community. They're your ambassadors. The more we see them, the more the organization is on our radar. We also like to hear buzz in the community. So if there are organizations that you have synergy with that are doing similar work, get to know them. You may have a unique approach, you may have a unique area that you serve or something different that you do, but at least be on the radar of those other organizations. So when a conversation comes up about who's doing good work in food insecurity, everyone can mention your name because you've been at the table with them. So I'm not saying necessarily collaborate, but at least be aware of what's out there and be there in the community and present.
Yeah, these three things, for those that are hearing this and are saying, that's simple. That's easy. I gotta tell you, Jackie, these three things are low-hanging fruit items that I have seen organizations not take full advantage of. I mean, these are just easy things. And so some may say, okay, I can put, the community foundation or any foundation on my mailing list. The problem is there isn't enough resources to put together a continuous message that's going out to any and all stakeholders. And then you talked about, which is one of my favorite, showing up at events hosted by the community foundation, like literally just being wherever the community foundation is because proximity builds relationship. I just think that some organizations struggle to do this. Are there ways that organizations can get around resource constraints that might be limiting their ability to, put together consistent mailing lists, show up at events, and create the community buzz?
Well, most community foundations don't charge for their events. So it's not a matter of money showing up at these events. And if you don't have a good, strong board who can represent you, I understand, most emerging organizations have a small staff. They may have a staff of one, they may not have any professional staff. It could be all volunteer. But if you don't have a good, strong board who's willing to go out and represent the organization and give that time, then perhaps not really ready for funding in a significant way. So make sure that that board is out there as the ambassador. So the key is, taking one step back. Make sure you've recruited a good, strong board that can represent you in the community and that you can say, hey, you know what, we need to be in this room. Can anybody cover this for us? And somebody's going to step up and say yes.
Oh man, there are so many rabbit holes I can go down with you.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I think for the newbies, the new organizations, the up and coming organizations, this is such, I think, a gold mine when you talk about leveraging your board because on the newer side for small organizations, some organizations view their boards as extension of staff people and they try to put their board to work as if they're there for the day-to-day ops and board members that's not their role and they don't have the capacity. But what you're saying is leverage your board to do something much more effective that doesn't require them to be in the trenches of the day-to-day operations, right? I mean, what's some of the pushback you've heard from organizations who say, our board, they're not able to do that or they're not capable of doing that?
Well, I think what you hear is that boards start with an organization starts with a founder who is passionate about something. Somebody has a great idea, somebody has a great passion. They get that piece of paper that says 501(c)(3, and suddenly they're an organization. They need, in the state of Connecticut where I am, they need 3 people on the board of directors. So they become a board member. They
Hmm.
get their significant other to be the second board member, and usually mother, aunt, next door neighbor, something like that.
Their cat, their
Um,
dog.
yeah, yeah. Well, I honestly, I haven't seen dogs, but it could be. Who knows? When a funder sees a board list that is the minimum 3, and 2 of the 3 last names are the same, that's suspect. Not a strong, independent board. Where's the oversight? Who's watching over the finances of public charity? So that's a question outright from the start. How much can you invest in an organization that doesn't have an independent board? But then when you start recruiting a few more people, so I'm going to use a food pantry or a soup kitchen. We want people there to feed the meals, to cook the meals, all of that. We may end up at the beginning with our board doing that. And that's exactly why some of those board members showed up. They want to make the difference and do that. That's fine. Let them have staff like functions, but they have to understand as a board member, they also have governance responsibilities. They have to be willing to do both. And at some point in an organization's life, those people who just want to roll up their sleeves and serve the meals are volunteers. They have to get off the board, do the staff like work as a volunteer, or join the staff and allow someone to come onto the board who wants to set the strategic vision, who wants to represent in the community as an ambassador, who wants to work with the executive director and let that staff person run the organization. And what's a barrier to that? Oh, that executive director doesn't want anybody running the organization besides them. They don't want independent governance. They want to do what they want to do without anyone being their boss. And in a nonprofit, it has to be a strong partnership between the founder, the executive director, and the board of directors. There has to be that check and balance. And sometimes people don't want to object.
Good. I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier when you talked about making that first ask and how to do it effectively. You mentioned reviewing the annual report of the foundation you're targeting. All types of data can be found there, as well as in 990s. But then you mentioned making a smart dollar request. Can you just lean into that a little bit? Just explore that for organizations who are not familiar with that terminology or that type of approach, how to make the best ask financially for their project, whether it's a new project or a repeat project application.
Well, first of all, you have to see what the funder what their history, their giving history is like. So if they have a usual pattern of giving 10, 15, $20,000 grants and you're looking for 75, you're in the wrong place.
Mm,
If they give out one a year at 75 and you've never met them before, you better go for a $10,000 one first before you go for the 75. But then you have to look at your own internal structure. An organization asking for more than their entire operating budget. I just started my organization. I operated on $5,000 last year, but I'd like a $50,000 grant this year. You operated on 5 last year. What are you going to do with the 50? You have to make a really strong case for growth, and a funder has to be confident that you've got the infrastructure to take 10 times the money you had last year on in one tranche and be able to manage it effectively. So you've got good financial management. So the budget that you submit has to have a good, clear, understandable format. It has to show that you have vision for what you're doing and you know exactly how that money is going to be spent. There have to be other partners. We want no funder ever wants to be the sole and or perpetual source for any project. So there have to be other funders involved, whether it's individual fundraising that you've done or other foundations, corporate support, local support. And we have to know that there's a sustainability plan. If you get that $75,000 this year for that program, what do you do next year? Because maybe our policy says you can only come once every 3 years. So you got it for this year. What does it mean the next year? Do you lay off the staff? Do you have to shut down the program? Or do you have a plan to sustain our funding after we're out of the picture? So all of those things have to be considered, and they have to be in the application. A funder wants to know upfront what the long-term plan is for what you're doing.
yeah, this is so good. You're talking about evaluating giving trends. It almost feels like, Jackie, when you talk about looking at the giving trends of the funder, if they give one-time awards, a one award a year, or they give a certain number of awards a year, it almost feels like an art to this process to determine what the ask should be, determining what the frequency of giving for the funder is, and then my current position. And even for mature organizations who have millions of dollars. From what I remember from my time working in a larger nonprofit, uh, we went through these decisions all the time where we tried to evaluate what's the smart ask, even though we could ask for the max. Is it the best? Right? Can you just talk a little bit more about that and even why it's what you're saying is good information for the newbies, but also for the mature organizations?
Yep. So for anyone, a funder really wants you to ask for what you need.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to make a case for the specific figure. If you're asking for the max, that's fine if you really need the max. If you're asking for the max thinking, well, they're just going to cut me anyhow, so I might as well go for the top and then they'll cut me back. That may be true in some funders' cases, but I think the funder is going to look at an organization. I will tell you what we look at. We look at what do they really need to get done what they say they're going to do without burdening the organization, without making them, underpay their staff or cut programming to really get it done. What's it going to take? And that's the number that we're looking for. And then how does that fit in? How do we see that in your budget? When you submit that budget, where's the hole? Where's the gap? Now, it doesn't necessarily mean you can't have surplus, you can't have a reserve. We applaud that. If you've got a reserve, that tells me that you're saving up for something in the future. You're saving up for that the next pandemic, you're saving up for something that may, that's going to crash in the community. That's okay to have a bit of reserve. We're not going to ask you to spend down every penny before you get money from a funder. Funders truly do believe that. So don't be worried about a reserve. But what's the gap in operating in order to be able to do what you want to do? What's the real true cost? And that's what you should ask for.
This is a great segue into our last question as we wrap up here about storytelling and the effectiveness of storytelling. Um, Grant writing is telling a story about your community, a stakeholder group, your organization, if you will, and how it all fits together. In your final comments here, can you talk about effective storytelling strategies within a grant application and within the budget development process? Because you just mentioned your budget tells a story too.
Yep. It starts and ends with your mission. So remember, no matter what you're talking about within your narrative, it's all about you fulfilling your mission. So make sure you tie it back to that at the beginning, and tie it at the beginning and tie it at the end to what your mission is and what you're trying to accomplish, what this does for the community. And you mentioned that my degrees in journalism. I'm a writer. That's how I started on this. I wrote really effective grants. And that gives me the eye to be able to read really effective grants. And I've seen so many of them that, and there are some funders that want data. They want hard data. They want you to cite facts. They want statistics. They want, if you're a national organization, national statistics are fine. If you're a local organization, you need to be able to relate it to your own locale. So don't start saying what the national figures are and then tell me I'm going to work in one particular city. You have to be able to say what that city, what's the impact of that city. What am I going to do here where I'm operating? So that's the story you want to tell. You want to tell it as local as you possibly can, unless you're a national or a regional organization, and then you want to talk about your region or what you're going to do nationally. You want to make sure that you are balancing the anecdotal stuff with the statistical research that you have done that evaluate your own programs, and you can cite your own results and cite the need within the community that you serve of what is the research saying? Why are you doing what you're doing? What does the research say for what is the need for what you do? And that's all part of the narrative. Again, and it's all tied back to, we're doing this because my mission is to get rid of that. My mission is to serve that. My mission is to better that.
Absolutely. Final word for you, Jackie, and I'll lead you into this question for your final word. This interview is a celebration of the release of our latest webinar, How to Break Bottleneck Barriers, How to Break Barriers in Your Fundraising, and it's entitled Bottleneck Breaking. Um, can you leave us with one of your favorite methods of breaking fundraising bottlenecks that you have used over the years, that you have shared over the years, or something that's new that you're starting to articulate to some of your fundees?
I would say to fearlessly pursue earned revenue, and that's not necessarily charging for your services, because we all know that we do nonprofit services because the people we serve can't afford to pay for it. But what can you sell, and can you sell it to funders? So there are things you can do that you can earn money and pay unrelated business tax. Everybody's very afraid. Oh, I'm not doing unrelated business tax. Why? If it's going to produce revenue, do it. If it's something that you have strength to do, you have skill to do, it's going to serve a separate need and also generate revenue, go for it. If you have intellectual property, if you have a model for something you do that's perfect, market yourself, be a speaker, go around the country talking about your model for youth service. Talk about your model for how you put the meals together in your soup kitchen. They make, even if it's a token, that may be some revenue, but don't be afraid to sell intellectual property. Don't be afraid of earning some revenue. And think about marketing your different programs. If you can analyze the your programs for financial impact and for programmatic impact, think of them as cost centers. Think of them as individual marketable programs and use those instead of saying, oh, we do this, we're going to save the world. You're probably not going to save the world, but you're going to do great work. And how are you going to do that with the programs you do? So if you can talk about one program and market to funders, and I'm saying market to funders, that one program, and be able to speak with compelling outcomes and talk about as an investment in this program, then maybe that's a different way for funders to look at it for you.
This was so rich. This was so good. This aligns with what we believe, what we talk about in this particular podcast. Jackie, I appreciate you spending time with us. And for those that are watching this particular podcast and then you enjoyed this interview, there's more where this came from. Go through our archives of Dr. William P. Clark podcast, and you'll find a lot more where this came from. We certainly agree with everything Jackie said. But then also visit us at elipatrick.com/bottleneck breakers to get your seat for our webinar and to download the fundraising toolkit. This is Dr. William Clark, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye, everybody.